Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am really pleased you've joined me for this chat today because I have got one of my favourite people in the world in this chat today. He's what I would call the real epitome of a working actor. If you've seen it, chances are he's been in it. Friends, Showgirls, Ellen, there are so many I can't even begin to carry on, basically. Just please welcome one of the best people in this world, Mr. Patrick Bristow. Hello, Patrick.
Hi, Lindsey. Hi, everybody.
How are you, my love?
Good. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today. Obviously, full disclosure, we are friends. We know each other for about 10 years now, I think, isn't it? Yeah. And so it's extra special that you joined me today to have one of my dear friends here with me. So thank you, darling.
Oh, completely my pleasure. So
thank you. So we're going to chat about your career today. And what I want to do is basically your multi-layered, long career.
It's important. It's very important.
Yes. So what we'll do is we'll go right back to the beginning. Let's talk about young Patrick. Tell me about your sort of, when you were young, did you always want to be an actor? Was it always performing that you were into?
In some form or fashion, yeah. You know, whether it was making up fanciful lies and telling them to the neighbors, you know, practicing those skills. I was one of those kids that just made up all sorts of stuff. Like, you know, my dad flew us to Australia in his Cessna. And I have a pet koala, you know, that kind of stuff. When people go, So I definitely had like the imagination and the BS gift, the blarney, as my grandmother would have called it.
Right.
And then, you know, through school, doing school plays and stuff like that, I got into it. My parents had met in the theater, stage actors, and they gave that up long before I was born, but that's where they met. So, you know, there were scrapbooks and photos and things like that. So the idea of theater in our household and acting was not some foreign weird thing. It was something that was, you know, something that some people did.
Yeah.
So it never felt like it was this distant, you know, far away thing for me. I focused more on playing the clarinet and classical music through middle school and high school.
Right.
Yes, I was sure that was where my path lay.
Okay.
But no, I then went to college as a theater major after doing a play in high school, and I was bit by the bug. So that's how it all happened. And luckily, because my parents had been actors, they were very supportive and you know, and a little smart about it all. You know, they had good advice.
And so while you were going through this process, who were your kind of inspirations, people that you looked up to? Was there anyone that made you go, I want to do that?
Oh, I think Carol Burnett.
Right.
Yeah, even when I was in elementary school, you know, I think I wrote her a fan letter and got, you know, one of those autographed pictures that was clearly not really autographed. It was just a photocopy. Yeah. Yeah, I loved sketch comedy. I loved vivid, you know, maybe broader comedy. And I was very attracted to that. And because I was, you know, I had this bright red hair and a very expressive, you know, face for a kid, I think I was geared for that, for doing, you know, heightened stuff.
Yeah. That's wonderful. I can actually kind of almost see the kind of Carol Burnett influence in your work as well. It's similar. I love that about you, actually.
I would love that if that's the case. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I think it is. So let's talk about Groundlings, because obviously you said you did your major, but then you went and you were a member of Groundlings Comedy School, which is in Los Angeles, for people who don't know. And many people, including yourself, many famous people, many very successful people have come out of Groundlings. I think Lisa Kudrow, Melissa McCarthy as well, I think did as well. And I mean, can you talk?
The list goes on.
The list goes. It does. It really does.
Really does.
You know, and thanks to you, I've met members of Groundlings when I came to see the show, and then we took it to Edinburgh, and they've stayed really good friends. You know, so can you talk a bit about your experience there? Because I know you've also taught there now as well, and how you feel it helped you in your career.
Yeah, I at a friend's, you know, urging, I went and took a class there. It was the first time I really felt like I fit in, because I had done plays and musicals and even professional stuff at that point.
Yeah.
But you know, I always felt like I was the quirky odd guy in the ensemble, you know. In Jesus Christ Superstar, I was, you know, that apostle who just, you know, seemed like, he might be a little trouble sometimes,
You were the one
Ooh,
that sung the high note, right? What do
yeah.
we do? Yeah.
But this was the first place with improv and sketch where I felt like, well, this doesn't feel like I'm trying to put a square peg into a round hole. This
Right.
feels like home. And so I went through the school. I got into the performing company. The main company, was in there for 5 years. Worked with wonderful, wonderful people, some famous, some not. And then I retired my position about 5 years into it because I was doing a lot of TV at the point.
Right.
And it's like I didn't really need the showcase, but other people coming up through the school did need the showcase. So I know I sound like I'm virtue signaling, but it's like it's one of those companies where it's like if people don't leave, other people don't get in.
Right.
So, it was time. I was repeating myself, my sketches weren't as fresh. I was like, all right, I've done my tour. This is great. I'll always, thank the Groundlings and bless the day I walked through their door the first time.
Yeah.
But I moved on, and then I kind of really knuckled down on teaching improv, which I had done while I was in the Groundlings a bit, but I really knuckled down on it afterwards, and really found that I loved that so much and more actually than performing.
Right. It's very easy, isn't it? I think as a performer to stay somewhere where you feel safe. And I think it's quite a brave thing to do, to step out there and go, actually, I've done my time now. Let somebody else have my space and I'll go on to the next thing now. That's quite a brave thing to do as a performer.
I guess, more brave for some people. For me, I really felt like, okay, I'm going to close this door and another window will open. I will now be able to put my energies into something. There'll be something out there for me to do.
Yeah.
Um, but the comfort was a red flag to me. It was like, yeah, I think I need to get back to like when I was coming up through the Groundlings and I was challenged
Right.
and a little scared and not so sure.
It's
So
exciting.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I did that.
Definitely. Well, talking about your improv, for me, you are the king of improv. I mean, you've done so much with it. Like, Whose Line Is It Anyway? Both here and in the US, I think, as well. Haven't you?
Yeah, I did one episode for the UK version, although we shot it in LA, much to
Oh,
my,
right.
regret. I would have loved to, any chance I get to come to the UK, I will take. So, and I'm telling all your listeners that, like, if you'll put me up, I'll do an inspirational talk for $5, $5 US, which I guess is about £3. Anyway,
Well, probably less at the moment.
anyway, but I love the UK, and I've always been an Anglophile. So yeah, so doing the one with Clive for the UK was it was bittersweet because of that. But yes, I have done.
Do you remember who else was on that show with you from the UK?
You know what? I don't know that we had any of the UK
Was
cast.
it the US lot?
Yeah, I think it was just the Yanks, the rebels, the
Right.
the
Brian
defectors.
Stars and Colin Mockery, I'm sure, because they're everywhere.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, Colin, of course, both times I did it, I think was in the shows, and he's a doll.
Yeah, yeah, lovely, lovely guy. What do you think it is about improv that really terrifies some actors?
I think it's the unknown and the lack of control.
Right.
And it's kind of, in a way, it's not really a lack of control. It appears to be. It's also more vulnerable in a way, although I'm much more comfortable doing an improv than I would, let's say, taking on, let's say, an established role in some repertory theater company where everyone's going to compare me to everyone else who's done, that role in Uncle Vanya or something like that. Like I'd get cast in Uncle Vanya. Anyway.
Who would you say?
I don't know. Maybe the seagull in the seagull. I could do that.
Maybe.
Yeah, the title role. Thank you. But no, I think it's just how people are wired. But I really do love taking actors who are, let's say, investigating improv for the first time, going like, "Oh yeah, come on, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine." And then, especially if they're well trained or just good intuitive actors, they take to improv so quickly, and they're usually very delighted by how quickly they do pick it up, and they become kind of addicted to it.
Yeah.
So my whole thing with improv is that the dirty little secret about it is that we've all been doing it from the moment we were born.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
I'm not the only one who says it, but yeah, life is improv. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen
In life, yeah,
and
totally.
and you have a choice of how you're going to respond to any new stimulus in any moment.
Yeah.
You do so in the context of where you are in that moment,
Yeah.
Someone insults you. If you're at home alone with them, you might like go, hey, back the F off.
Yeah.
If you're in public, you might go, we're going to talk later. But
Yeah.
either way, you have that stimulus and you respond, in some kind of logical, human, somewhat predictable, way
Yeah.
in light of the context that you're in. So when people kind of realize that they already have the basic skills and they just need to get out of their way and get over the idea of performing it and go, I'm not competing with Robin Williams. I'm not, I don't have to, everything I do doesn't have to be brilliant.
Yeah.
And they start trusting the techniques and the process, then yeah, they always shine. And I love being the one there on the side, kind of getting credit for it, even though all I did was just guide them.
Guide them, put them on that right path. And I think you used the right word with intuitive. If you are intuitive, then improv can come quite naturally to you, but also definitely blocking. I remember when I sort of started off going to college and doing the very, very beginnings of my career, I'm like you, I love improv, although I've not done it nearly as much as you have. I remember doing a class and I got up to do a piece and I was just like, I have no idea what's in my head right now. And I literally just thought, don't even, just get out your head, basically. And so I did a piece about a chef. And then another girl got up and I could just see her almost physically blocking herself. And she just stood there and she cried. She couldn't do it and she cried.
Oh,
I know, awful, awful, bless her. And she's not
I call those improv injuries. And a lot of people are walking around with them, where they had some bad or traumatic experience, either just, because, they were put on the spot when they weren't ready.
Yeah, which actually I think was for her. Yeah.
Or whatever, and then that colors their entire take on the craft, for the rest of their lives, unless they replace that trauma with some positive experiences. In my classes, I always say, like, everyone has a suck pass. All the time, you have an everlasting, renewing suck pass. You can do in my class the worst improv work in the world, and you're still going to be fine. You're going to get some notes, but you're not going to be made to feel like you failed.
Yeah.
Because you're still taking the same chance that the person who had a wonderful, marvelous success did. Yeah. And it's a batting average. You may be the next person to have a great breakthrough. The person who's just been brilliant every time they get up there might hit the wall next time.
Mm.
And as long as we just all kind of accept that batting average and, make it less of an emotional thing, then the work can take place and the work is fun.
Yeah, and it can be so fun. Improv is such fun. And if you get that real dynamic going between a group of actors, it's just the best feeling in the world. I love it, absolutely love it. Well, let's talk a little bit about your TV career. And of course, we've got to start with the show that I certainly first knew you from, and that's Ellen, back in the 90s. And you were involved in that very famous episode, the puppy episode, known as the Coming Out episode in 97. Of course, at that time, it was a very, very highly controversial episode. And as you know, is well documented, it almost pretty much ruined Ellen DeGeneres' career. What was it like to be involved in that at the time? Like, it must have, when you look back on it, I mean, at the time, how did it feel? But also when you look back on it now, like, how does it sort of still play out in your mind?
Right. Well, at the time, it was exhilarating. It was equal measures scary and exciting. You knew that it wasn't just going to be, another episode. You knew that it wasn't just going to be, something that lasted one news cycle. It was something that people were going to talk about. It was going to inform and inspire conversations and dialogue. So that part was really exhilarating. The scary part was that no one had done it like that before.
Right.
And what was the public backlash, if any, going to be? And prior to that and since then, but definitely prior to that, I think most gay people in the United States, at least, walked around kind of always looking over their shoulder.
Right.
Are we safe? Are we safe? Are we safe? It's a constant, and I don't have to tell you as a woman what that is, but I think a lot of certainly cis white guys like myself, gay or straight, well, the straight ones don't necessarily have that, although I don't want to speak for them because maybe they do in their own way, but gay people definitely have that kind of like, am I going to have to run for the car? Am I going to have to talk my way out of, getting beat up or something? So, that ever-present fear suddenly had a magnifying glass on it.
Yeah.
What if the entire culture engages in rejecting this?
Right. Gosh.
That was scary.
Yeah.
Before the coming out episode, there was one where my character exchanges engagement rings with his boyfriend Barrett,
Yeah.
and that one, when it aired that night, I was, a little bit nervous. I was like, well, let's see how this gets reviewed in the morning, because we didn't have kind of internet we have now.
Yeah.
Maybe we had AOL, but so during that time, it was understandably nerve-wracking. Anything from the bomb threat that got called into the set of Ellen during the taping
Wow.
of one of the tapings of the puppy episode, or just people in public just going like, "Is it tonight? That's great, that's great." It was everything.
Right. I mean, I wasn't actually aware that there was a bomb threat phoned in.
Yeah, the puppy episode was shot in two parts. I was in one of them. I don't remember if I was in one or two, but anyway, the shooting, the tape night of the other part that I wasn't in, a bomb threat was called into Disney, and they had to clear out the audience, bring in the dogs, do the whole thing, and then they got back to taping. But you know, that was kind of cold water in the face. That was like, oh yeah, there's crazies out there, and they're serious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sadly, there still are, aren't there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And when you look back on it now, do you feel that your character, Peter Barnes, of course, a beautiful character, warm, funny, supportive, lovely. There's the doggy. There's the cat. Do you feel like that character really kind of gave your career a push, and certainly being involved in all of that at the time?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I had suddenly kind of a semi-regular visibility on the show, because I was not a regular; I was a recurring. So that meant that I was popping up in prime time, television on a sitcom that was, it wasn't Friends or Seinfeld in terms of its audience, but it was definitely one of the top ones. So yeah, that got me more auditions, more offers, established more of a presence, and I would say that was kind of the springboard for my my the rest of my television career. Yeah.
Yeah, because you did some great shows. Let's face it, you did Mad About You. You've done Friends. For those who, a couple of people asked me who you were in Friends, and I say you were the awful man that wouldn't let Monica dance on the podium on New Year's Eve. And of course, you did Curb Your Enthusiasm, which I love. I love Curb Your Enthusiasm. Do you feel, and we touched on this briefly when you were talking about your sort of upbringing, do you feel that comedy is your real forte, or has it just kind of naturally gone that way for you?
I would say it's naturally gone that way for me, and I have the most experience in that.
Yeah.
For me, drama is hit and miss. There are times where I felt like, okay, I think I did an okay job with that part, and then there's times where I'm like, I can see in my eyes I'm not as present as I would have liked to have been. Um, you know, uh, you know, so I guess the answer is yes, it's kind of where it went, but also I think I'm more designed for it.
Right.
I do, as I get older, long for doing what I would call boring parts. I would love to be the guy on some crime show that just comes in and reads a few stats in the beginning, and then in the end, has coffee with the rest of them, and just says some expository stuff. I'd love that.
Would you? Classics. Do you ever fancy yourself doing a bit of Shakespeare or something like that?
Oh God, no. I mean, I did that in college, but I'm not. I'm not. I don't have the training to the degree required. I can do improv Shakespeare to certain effect.
Right.
And I know not to put th on the end of a noun. That's one of my things that drives me crazy. People say, "Well, I will to the houseth," and I'm like, "Oh God."
Ah,
In
yeah.
fact, I did a workshop with people. I said, guys, let's actually study Shakespeare. Let's study the language, the syntax, the rhythm, the metaphors, the themes, and then improvise Shakespeare. And of course, it made it infinitely better.
Yeah.
Everyone's work was just so lifted up. I made them do monologues and sonnets, not for laughs.
Okay. And how did that go down?
Some people were really terrified of it.
Really?
Yeah, one who's very funny and very good. He was doing Mark Antony's speech, Julius Caesar's funeral, Friends, Romans, Countrymen. And it's hard to do that straight faced for an American comedian. And as he started it, I'm going, you're making fun of it. Start again.
Yeah.
And he was so like thrown and pissed at me a little bit. But then when he did it with truth and vulnerability and all that backstory that was just a right behind the last layer of skin, it was right there. It was fabulous. And so when he went on then to improvise Shakespeare, it had a little of a nod to that gravitas and a little nod to the less comedic aspects of it, which made his so
Wonderful.
it was a fun experience.
Well, Shakespeare is one of my most favorite things in the world, and so any chance I get to perform Shakespeare, I'm right there. Maybe we should do
more power to you.
Oh, I think I did my Queen Margaret, didn't I? My Queen Margaret that I did.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was fabulous.
Oh, thank you. I so enjoyed it. I would love to do something like that with you. Okay, so let's talk about let's get this out of the way. You were in one of the most iconic films ever as the thrust-it guy. Yes. And that's of course Showgirls. Showgirls. And you did make Elizabeth Berkley thrust it several times. And did you have any idea when you were doing that film, doing that scene, how iconic that would become?
No.
Because Showgirls is great. I love it.
I knew doing that particular bit that it was ridiculous over the top.
Yeah.
I was being directed to be more dynamic, Patrick, more dynamic, slap her ass. I'm like, okay. And I was a good soldier. I marched right into, oncoming enemy fire and mustard gas and all of it. I just did what I was told. When I auditioned for the film and I had that thrust it section, I literally was just leaning against a wall and just like trying to keep dancers on the beat in my mind. So I was just going, and thrust it, stay on the beat. Good. Like it was that. Nice. And then, when we got on set and I saw what was being done, I was like wide-eyed. And Glenn Plummer, I forgot the name of his character. He played the dancer that Elizabeth Berkley was involved with before she became a star. And he took her to the club and he taught her how to dance and everything. He was off camera just kind of watching. And he's like going, and I'm like, what can I do? They've set lights for this. There's been a stand-in. There's a lot going on. I will be on the floor doing that.
Yeah.
And so it's what it was.
But it's great. It's so great. Like there's moments that film. It's one of those. God bless you, Gina Gershon. It's one of those so bad it's brilliant films. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just. And yet everyone's performing. I can't pinpoint what it is about it that people think is bad about it, really, because it's so much of it.
Yeah, I was about to say
that makes it absolutely fantastic, and that is one of those scenes that really makes the film. I love it anyway. Any chance I get to sit and have a Showgirls binge, I'm up for it completely. Well, let's talk about you and me, Patrick.
Yes,
you and I met.
Why haven't we worked out? Why hasn't this happened?
I don't know. I'm sorry. But we met in 2013 because you came and performed Puppet Up with the team, the Henson Alternative, at Assembly Hall, where I was the venue manager. So that's
work.
And so let's, and I believe I made you bring me chocolate every single day as well.
I don't think I brought the chocolate every day, but I'll take the credit. I didn't.
Mucking around and saying, and you got to bring me chocolate every day, and then they did. Every single day I had chocolate on my desk from the Henson lot. It was fantastic. But I warmed you and I got along straight away. We warmed to each other quite well, and we've been inseparable ever since, darling. And but let's talk about Puppet Up in particular. And Puppet Up is, of course, I mean, I actually describe it as whose line is it anyway with puppets, because it's audience participation. It's what I love about Puppet Up is actually kind of two shows in one, isn't it? You're watching the puppeteers on stage doing what they do, but you've actually got these lovely big screens where you're actually watching as if you're watching an episode of the Muppets or something like that. You're just seeing the puppets and what they do. And oh, bingo wings. And it was a wonderful thing for me to be involved with, just for that small sort of run during Edinburgh. But can you talk more about its conception and sort of, because I think it was called Stuffed and Unstrung before, was it? Was that what it was called before?
Yes, and then before that it was called Puppet Up, and then before that it was called Jim Henson's Puppet Improv.
Right.
And then before that it was called something like Jim Henson's Experimental Puppet Improv Demonstration. I mean, like,
because you are like the co-creator, the host, the director as well, and of course you work very closely with Brian Hensen, who now runs the Jim Henson Company, who's the loveliest man, of course. So can you talk a little bit about the process of Puppet Up and the fact of where it's traveled to today and your relationship with the Henson lot?
Well, it started off as just like a 6-week class that I was going to do once a week, one evening a week, at Henson with some of the puppeteers that Brian hired, you know, on a more regular basis. And we had to make some alterations to the approach of improv as I knew it and taught it, for humans making eye contact with each other, you know, being in the same space. Because the Henson puppetry technique is all above the head.
Right.
The cameras are set at like about 6.5 feet high, so or 7 feet high or whatever, so that they can work the puppet over their head. And then they're looking at monitors showing what that camera shows all the time. They don't break to look at each other. So that means they're missing out on so many micro communications that we get to have, even on Zoom.
Yeah,
We're having more like we're seeing each other's expressions. They're only seeing what the puppet does.
right.
So
Wonderful what they do. It really is.
yeah, it's very difficult. I'm glad I'm not a puppeteer and I don't do it myself, because I think it would drive me crazy. It's hard. So anyway, we did the class. Brian said, "Do you want to keep doing it?" I said, "Absolutely." It was so much fun. And then after a couple months, I said, you know, maybe they should do a little demonstration like on the lot for the other employees, like at lunchtime or something, you know, out here in the courtyard. And he went, "Yeah, let me think about that." And the next thing I know, he's set aside the sound stage, the big Henson Chaplin sound stage, for a night, and rented bleachers and video equipment and microphones and stuff like that. And I'm like, what is happening? And we had an audience of about 200 or more, like, you know, invitees, many of whom were big hitters in the entertainment industry. And there we were doing puppet improv for the first time in front of people, and got a standing ovation. I think people were very excited about the mashup of the two forms. And then we did another one a couple months later. And there were people there from like the Edinburgh Festival and then the Aspen Festival. And so it just kind of snowballed into invitations to bring this demonstration, because it wasn't a show. It wasn't produced really. It didn't have musical numbers. It didn't have any, you know, like lighting effects or anything, you know. Now, you know, almost 20 years later, it is, it's about a 2-hour evening with an intermission, including the intermission. And there are the improvs that we do. There are song improvs, usually a couple per show. You know, one is a James Bond opening title sequence, which is fun. And then we've got other ones that are kind of like a little of a Paul Bunyan, American Tall Tale kind of song, like you'd expect to hear at Disney. Another one is a call and response, kind of Cab Calloway. And then we also have written bits in there, that some of which are vintage, that are, you know, 60 some odd years old, that were done on the Ed Sullivan Show by Brian's dad and Frank Oz. So we've revamped those and brought those back, which we did at Edinburgh in our short.
I remember seeing the film with the slinky thing.
Java.
Sorry, yeah, I remember seeing that and thinking, oh my god, like.
Yeah, Java, and now we've got 5 of these vintage recreations.
Right.
We have a piece I created that closes the first act called Windy, and some technological fun stuff with layering and using kind of like almost like a green screen effect, but it's blue.
Right.
So it's a much more complete show, working on firing on a bunch of different cylinders and working on a bunch of different levels than it started out, which was just like a demonstration. So it really has been the most organically developed project I've ever been involved with in my entire life. It wasn't like we set out to do this commercial thing. It became that in increments and increments, and it still is very much alive today. We get a new artist coming in to do one of the pieces that we've done forever, and they go, "Hey, would you mind if I did it this way?" We're like, "Great, let's look at it." So we don't. So it's not like one of those shows where no matter what company you see, it's going to be the same show, the same gags, the same. It's alive.
Yeah.
We switch it up depending on our performers, and that's fun.
Cool. And so now when you're performing it, is it still as heavy audience participation as it was back when I worked with you?
Yeah, we still bring a couple up on stage at one point. We still bring an individual up on stage at one point. And we get sometimes the suggestions for the songs are about somebody in the audience.
Right.
There's a lot of interplay between me and the audience. I don't know if it's different than it was in Edinburgh. There's a slightly different tone when we were performing in the UK and in Australia. You know, it's a different local tone.
The humor, I suppose, has to be slightly tailored as well. Maybe.
It shifts a little bit. Mostly it's the audience demeanor. It's like our audiences in LA are deliciously bratty. They will throw it right back at me. Yeah. I found the Edinburgh audiences were polite, and they love dark humor.
Yeah.
You know, we don't strive to go work blue and do potty mouth stuff. Yeah. But if the suggestion that we're getting organically lends itself to some language and some situations, the puppeteers will go there. And the puppets get away with things that, you know, fleshy improvisers, as we now call them, fleshies, humans, don't get away with. You know, so we can be a little politically incorrect at times, and our show takes a gentle poke at pretty much everyone, myself included. But it's in that Henson way of it being mischievous, not mean.
Yeah. Which is a lot of Henson stuff. If you look at the films and things like that, look at Labyrinth, you know. In fact, the last time I came to the Henson lot, I was meeting Brian, and I waited in reception, and Labyrinth was on the telly, and I literally said to the receptionist, "Tell him I've cancelled. I'm staying here." Okay. Yeah. Last time I was the last couple of times I was in LA, you very kindly showed me around the Jim Henson lot, which is the old Charlie Chaplin studios, which has got so much history there. It's unreal. And I loved seeing Muppets coming out from everywhere for a start. And I loved seeing the toilets had Miss Piggy and Kermit the Frog for male and female, and just so much little detail all around the place. It was wonderful. It must be quite something special to perform on that lot, because it's not open to the public, is it? Unless it.
No, it's not like even like Universal or something like that, where you can take a tour. Yeah. I mean, they do some tours, but they're privately curated and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is very special for all those reasons. The fact that it's the mothership for the Jim Henson Company. The fact that it has that pedigree of the Muppets, even though the Muppets are owned by Disney and they're completely different IP now. And then the A&M recording studios that are part of the Henson lot are now called the Jim Henson Recording Studios. But Karen Carpenter recorded there. Wow. So many, every great recording artist has recorded there.
The one thing I got actually when I came to the lot, and particularly when I went into Brian's office and walking through and seeing the massive picture of David Bowie as Jared, walking into Brian's office, was how friendly it was, how friendly and open, and just like you're treated like family when you're there. It's like come and have a seat on the sofa. You know, everyone's just so open. I
Yeah.
was I thought that was beautiful. You don't often get that.
No, no, you don't. And it's kind of, it's a family operation.
Yeah.
It's the difference of going into a corporate, let's say, retail store, you know, with all of its, you know, gloss and all of its protocols and everything, or
Yeah.
going into a family owned store where the person behind the counter and the person in the back room and the person who's stocking things in the front are all, you know, family, and there's a warmth, you know, to it.
Yeah.
So I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing. And I just loved Brian. And he came out to meet me and he had his jeans rolled up, no shoes on, just barefoot, like just. And I loved that. What I didn't realize when I first met Brian, when we met in 2013, and I met Brian's wife, I didn't realize that she is Sloane Peterson from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and didn't even click on, literally stood having a conversation with her and didn't. Sloane Peterson. And then afterwards, I was just like, oh man.
Yep, that's Mia Sarah. Mia
Yeah.
Sarah. She is
Yeah.
wonderful.
Such a beautiful woman. Such a beautiful woman.
Inside and out.
Yeah. So let's just go right back to your improv. You're still teaching improv, of course, and you're doing it mainly online now, I believe.
Yeah, during pandemic, I started doing what I felt was an adequate application of Zoom and improv, and that was lessons. And I could do, like, a class is usually like a 3 hour affair, but the lessons are an hour and a half. We focus on the types of skills and approach things that can be done effectively on Zoom.
Yeah.
And we leave the things that don't work on Zoom aside, and people can do those in their in-person classes, physicality, object work, things like that.
Yeah.
Zoom makes you have to listen pretty acutely, because if two people speak at once. As you know, the mic kind of fights to, you know, decide who it's going to honor. And there's and there's a distancing that happens. So people have to work beyond that. So I find that anything verbal, anything listening, anything informational, and even some emotional and character work can really actually work in this safe little, you know, Zoomosphere. And they can try things out that they can then take to their, you know, their in real life improv endeavors.
Yeah.
So I do that. I do my improv lessons.
Right. And if someone wants to do your lessons, how do they go about doing that?
I think I'm contactable through patrickbristow.com.
Okay.
I think you know, an email reach out link. It might go through my manager first, but that's okay.
Yeah. So with all your improv characters, the TV characters, the film characters that you've done, the puppetry work that you've sort of overseen, how do you have a process of how you create a character, whether it's like Peter Barnes and Ellen or the Thrustbit guy, you know, or AJ and the Queen, of course, you did that with RuPaul. You know, how do you have a process for each character, or do you feel that it depends on what the character brings you? If that makes sense.
It really depends on what the givens are, what is on the page, how they describe the character, what they're expecting. Do I deliver that right on the nose? Do I put a little twist on it? Do I ignore that and give them, well, this is how I would do it? It really depends on the project and the role and the culture of that particular project.
Yeah.
Something like Peter on Ellen, that was an extension of myself. There's a part of me that is clueless and a little bit caffeinated and happy, less so as I get older, by the way. Thank God for everyone around me. But I generally try to find what is already connective tissue between myself and what they expect the character to be. And I strengthen that and then maybe turn down the frequency of things that contradict it, unless maybe one of those things is actually very helpful. So anyway, so that's where I usually start. And the characters that I developed at the Groundlings, the original ones, came out of all sorts of things. A lot of self-parody. You know, another character I developed just came out of the word delicious. I was just driving and going, isn't that delicious? Delicious. And I was having fun with that. And then it started turning a little Tim Curry. And then next thing I knew, I had my Leslie Fishwife character, who I did at the beginning of So I Married an Axe Murderer.
Okay.
first had me come in and do Leslie Wipe in the opening scene. And so how I've come across characters has been a variety of things. Or Tim Gunn, I just watching him on Project Runway, and then finally just going like, all right, designers, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And, finding like, hey, I kind of sound like him and I kind of look like him. So,
Yeah. I love it when real life people kind of inspire you when you're creating a character. I remember years and years ago, I had to create a character and I was having trouble with the physicality of this character. And then I suddenly was sat with my friend and her mum, and I suddenly thought, that's it. It's your mum. And so I was like walking around the kitchen following her, just being a bit like following her, like copying her physicality. I was like, this is it. This is what this character is. It's hulking and over. And literally, when I did it in rehearsals, because she was the director, like the daughter, she literally said to me, are you doing my mum? I was like, yeah.
Minor detail there, Lindsey. Minor detail.
Sorry, minor detail. Yeah, it was the director's mum, but she was old friend that's almost family, that is family really. And literally was like, "Are you doing my mum?" And I was like, "Yes,
yeah,
I am."
She loves one of the early assignments, at Groundlings is to do family members, because we have so many observations of them, and especially to get under our skin or have some effect on us. We have processed that for thousands of hours, and our senses of them are pretty acute. So like I did my mom at the Groundlings, coincidentally for a Bowden sketch. She was a poll worker.
Okay. Gosh, that's tomorrow, isn't it? Blimey.
But telling everyone she'd been a dancer, and like anyone who'd listen. I've done my brothers, kind of a version of them as characters,
But I mean, it's the most inspiring thing around you, isn't it? It's people watching is what actors do all day, every day.
Yes, and everyone has got a past roommate or a past friend who really drove them crazy. Whether you love them or not, they had some mannerisms, habits, the way they would talk to waitresses in public or whatever it was that just made you go like, ah,
yeah.
And those are fun things to send up. And I think if you do it in a non-mean way, it resonates. The audience goes, I know that person, because we're not that different.
Yeah.
So they know that person, even if they don't know your person like that, or they go, I am that person.
Yeah.
We often laugh at when we go like, oh my God, I am so that person when I'm waiting in line and there's silence. I just start talking to strangers whether they want me to or not.
Yeah. What have you been up to recently? Because you did this lovely Netflix show, didn't you? Nobody Wants This. And you've done the reboot, Wizards of Waverly Place, I believe it's called. Great.
Now it's called Wizards Beyond Waverly Place, and I did a couple episodes in their first order of shows, and I could go back on that.
Sorry, this is an older show, isn't it? From 2007 or something?
Well, the original Wizards of Waverly Place was, and now this is a brand new reboot where the guy who played the son, David Henry, is now playing the dad in the new version.
Okay.
And, so it's well written. It's a lot of fun. The special effects are beautiful. The kids in it are so good, on and off screen both. They're just
pros.
Really good kids, pros.
Yeah. It's quite scary, isn't it, when the kids are more professional than you are? I found that.
Oh, that's always been the case. I've always been like, I lean into like a 12-year-old before they, say action. I go, what do I say at the beginning?
There's brilliant bloopers, isn't there, from Friends of Jennifer Aniston not knowing her lines, and it was Cole Sprouse, wasn't it, who played the young Ben, and him like saying her lines. She's like, okay.
Oh, those Sprouse kids, they were fabulous. They were like machines.
Yeah.
Oh, Andy.
Hi.
How are you, beautiful?
How are you? Are you okay?
I'm great. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. You're looking beautiful as ever.
Now you can see how pasty white I really am when tan man.
You're not. This is fake tan. Don't worry about it.
Get all this handsome out of here.
Bye. Oh, love him. Well, I have one last question for you, which is, quite a hard one, I guess, really, when you think about it, because there's so much. But if you could, if someone's watching this and they thinking, you know what, I'm quite inspired by Patrick, I kind of want to follow in his footsteps. What is the one piece of advice that you could offer to somebody who's wanting to go into maybe comedy through improvisation, and kind of wants to do a similar vein to what you've done?
Yeah, I would say I'm going to base this piece of advice on what I feel I've gotten from it, and I
Okay.
maybe could have gotten more of it had I had, this realization
Yeah.
earlier. And that is, it's the same thing as I think written over the oracle at Delphi. It's to thine own self be true, you know,
Right.
uh, and I think it is, or is it Shakespeare or both? Oh God, darn. Anyway, I think it's know yourself and get to know yourself kind of fearlessly and unapologetically.
Yeah.
You know, the reason I can do self parody and it doesn't hurt my feelings, or I can take self parody and stuff like that, is because I have a paradigm that is way, bigger than my little efforts and my little hobbies and my little dreams and everything like that. So getting to know myself objectively as much as one can, um, has helped me really realize my strengths, my
Mm.
weaknesses, what are perceived as maybe my weaknesses, but aren't, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I can be awkward and socially not pick up cues, but it's earnest and it's coming from a nice place, and I'm not changing it. I mean, I'll try to rein it in, so that I'm not, hard to be around. But
They're not
at
hard.
the end of the day, I can't let, fads of culture, the idea of cool, or the idea of, what is current, behavior, like you're supposed to have this confidence or you're supposed to be this. I can't let that define me.
No.
Just like with a role, I bring me to the table and see how it fits, adjust what I'm willing to adjust, and not adjust what I'm not.
Yeah.
And knowing that I will have to adjust some things. Everyone does. We all do,
Yeah, of
to
course.
be part of a group. So I'd say get to know yourself. Get to know yourself fearlessly and unapologetically.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful piece of advice. And actually, you know what? I wish someone had told me that when I was younger, because I think it's only in the last 5 years I've really got to know myself well.
In life it takes time, but
Yeah.
I think for artists, especially young artists who, are also learning the basics of their craft, they can shorten the learning curve a little bit by doing that work.
Mm.
Otherwise, many of them have their heads stuck in, their painting, their sculpture, their theater, their music, whatever. And then somewhere around middle age, they come up for air and go, I haven't developed as a person.
Yeah.
I'm this fabulous cellist or whatever, but I haven't developed as a person, or I'm missing something. And I don't think you have to. In fact, I think if you start addressing some of those things earlier, and at least having the
Mm.
curiosity about yourself, watching how you behave in a certain situation, go like, what was that about?
Yeah.
Why did I, agree to do that? Or why did I cut that off and not let that develop further? Who
Yeah.
in me did that? And I think that also then makes your art, whether it's acting, improv, painting, or playing the cello, is going to inform that
Mm.
earlier. Because
Yeah.
there is a maturity in artistic pursuits that takes years to get.
Hmm.
But some people have it early. Um, Sheku Mason, the cellist, I'm thinking of cellist now, of the Chineki Foundation in the UK. He's one. I mean, like, had that maturity as a very young man
Hmm.
playing that instrument. And you could just see it. You could just go, well, that he's already that artist that people 20 years ahead of him are trying to be. And I'm not just talking about the technique of playing the instrument.
Mm.
I'm talking about that connection to
Yeah.
who you are.
Yeah. Knowing who you are, letting that come through, and it only develops more as you get older, as you get to know yourself better. And I think part of that is knowing what you will put up with, what you won't put up with, which again kind of helps you to make better decisions when it comes to your work as well.
And sometimes what politically and just socially is going like, what, I will put up with this because I see the bigger picture and I see the
Yeah.
other people as human beings and what they're going through. And you know what? I can handle this
Yeah.
for now, and I will not be a diva about it. but then also really knowing, like, at times where it's like, yeah, no, I have to say something. This will not fly, you know. Yeah. And to say it in a compassionate way, not like I just did. Like, I'm going and go, this will not fly. Can you imagine? On Showgirls to Verhoeven, when he goes, you're going to go thrust it. I go, no, this will not fly.
This will not fly. This will not thrust. I mean, it probably won't. It's so old now. But well, listen, thank you so much for joining me today, Patrick. It's been absolutely lovely to talk to you. It's always lovely to talk to you. It's always lovely. And
well, my pleasure, and always lovely to talk to you. Anytime.
Thank you, darling. Hopefully I will get back over to LA soon and we can have a proper catch up at a Starbucks, because you have a Starbucks.
I'll get you something chocolate.
Of course, always. Thanks so much, my love. Take care.
Bye.